Hi, welcome to Hermes Christmas. I love Hermes, I love Christmas, so why not combine the two? Last year, when Jane Birkin died, I was a little obsessed with Hermes and trying to recreate their products, specifically the Birkin bag. As a child of the 90s and the early 00s, I was absolutely in love with the satchel style with the front flap. Old Navy had bags like that, Gap had bags like that, Wilson's Leather had bags like that, Bath and Body Works and Nine West. However, I noticed in the past 10 to 15 years, I wasn't coming across as many contemporary designers who were styling bags within the Birkin style. But luckily, in the past year, there has been this weird explosion where all of a sudden, after Jane Birkin's passing, all of a sudden I started to come across more vintage bags on Etsy, on Poshmark, on eBay that were definitely inspired by Birkin. And I'm also coming across so many amazing spaces, not just the Perks blog and the Hermes Reddit, but just various influencers who are all of a sudden doing Hermes unboxing. And although that wasn't there a year ago, I'm so glad that they're here now. But regardless, I figured I would share with you a little bit of my journey in attempting to recreate the Birkin inspiration without breaking the bank. The first stop is basically going ahead and just going with the vegan leather. I would say about 10 to 15 years ago, there were numerous places that were actually making a lot of vegan leather. I would say that there was someone who created a bag that was sold on ModCloth. Anne Klein and Ann Taylor had a bag. And also Guess had a bag. And I purchased these and I loved them. But after a year or two, they eventually just wore down and the pleather just rubbed off. But a lot of the more recent bags I've come across at least 10 years ago, or in the last 8 to 10 years, the vegan leather or the PU has become much better. So some of the bags I have actually purchased from Silver Legends, which is available online. And their bags vary. They're between 45 to 65, but they can also be above that depending on the popularity of the brand or below that. Also, they sell leather bags as well. So with this bag, I absolutely love. My sorority sisters were super jealous when I purchased it. They thought that it was for way more than I spent for it. I've also purchased bags in other colors that I have given to other family members. And I've also purchased from them bags that are in the white color. I have also purchased bags that are golden brown. And as you can tell, the pink tends to be my favorite. But again, these are great bags. They're done in the Birkin inspiration. They've got the nice little tag, but they're changing it up a little bit with the flap and with how they're doing the front detailing. So again, you can get a nice vegan leather bag for between $50 to $85. Next up is the vintage era. Again, after Jane Birkin died, I did a deep dive into what was available on Etsy, Poshmark, and eBay. And there are a ton of bags that were generated in the 80s and 90s, as well as the early 00s that were made with absolutely fabulous leather in the Birkin style, but were not Birkins. So first up, this is something that I purchased from an Etsy seller, French Vintage Bibelot. And the one thing I like about this is that it is made by Laura Biagiotti. This is an actual mid-tier designer. And this looks like an almost exact duplicate of a Birkin crocodile bag. However, this is clearly faux crocodile. Additionally, if you look a little bit closer, you can tell that the more that I have carried this bag, that it's starting to get frayed upon the edges. However, I didn't pay more than $200 for this bag. Also, you can tell that it differs because number one, it has this huge nameplate that's telling you that this is Laura Biagiotti and is not Hermes. Also, when you look at the top, it is using a zipper as opposed to the open flap. But I'm up in the air about this because it was made in the early OOs. As you can tell, it is brown, which seems to be the only color they really used at that time. But it's a well-made bag, and I've been able to use that for interviews or for anything that requires a more low-key type of style. Another bag that I've purchased, and this is also from another Etsy seller, Depot Sauvage, and they have sold this from a Japanese distributor. This is not an Hermes bag in the slightest. Parts of it looks as if it could have been hand sewn, but it also could have been sewn by a sewing machine. But when you get up a little bit closer, you can tell that the threads are much darker. So it's using a black thread with a brown bag. And ordinarily, I believe that you would want to either use brown to match the leather or a white contrast stitching. There are parts where you can tell that the stitching is a little bit frayed. Also, they did a great job of branding it right here so that there's a nice little design that makes it clear this is not a Birkin, this is a Birkin inspiration bag. But I love this bag just because it's absolutely gorgeous leather. I don't believe I paid more than $200, but then there is tax and shipping. And this is one of my favorite bags, and I purchased it for cheap. However, my pièce de résistance is a bag from Letterer de Paris. And Letterer de Paris was established in 1885, and they've been around for a while. Unfortunately, sometime during the mid 20th century, they started copying Hermes style. And initially, it was just a Kelly bag here or a Birkin bag there. But by the early OOs, they had literally made a copy of 9 different Hermes products. So Hermes trotted out their lawyers and sued the Lederer family because descendants were still running the company, and that forced them to go out of business. If you do a quick Google search, you will come across some posts from the early OOs where they had a fire sale in their Madison Avenue location. They didn't disclose at the time why they were having a fire sale, but they let people know that some of their things were going for 40 to 60% off. Note, their faux Birkin bags did not have a high percentage off. This bag I actually bought for $60, and I'm really happy with it. I love the bag, I love the style, and I really like it more for the history. The fact that this was created as a copy or replica of a Birkin, and Hermes stopped them cold. However, the one thing I can say about the leather is that it literally feels as if this was made in the 70s or 80s. You know, that type of hard leather that hasn't aged well and just kind of gets harder the older it becomes and a little bit more inflexible? That is basically this bag. I will say that there are other people that are selling Letterer de Paris bags. If you look on Poshmark or eBay, you will come across these bags, and some of them are sold for $20, some are sold for $200. But that's about the range, like the mid 50 to mid hundreds, and rarely more. However, there are a couple enterprising people who are trying to sell the faux Birkin town and country style bags for more. I came across one woman trying to sell this bag, this size, for about $500 Australian, and then another woman on Poshmark trying to sell a much larger bag, maybe around over 30 centimeters, maybe closer to 40 centimeters, and selling that for $2,000. Note, neither of these products have been sold since the summer, but maybe one of them has been sold since then. But again, Letterer de Paris, it does not sell on the secondhand market for more than $100, so this is not theft worthy. I just like it for the history. Another option that is out there, and again, there are so many options out there, and I love that a year ago when I was looking for these bags and looking for Birkin style and looking for Birkin inspiration, I just couldn't come across anything. But all of a sudden now people are going into their grandmother's closet, their mother's closet, and they are pulling out these fashion finds. So another fashion find that I have purchased, and I believe this is from Etsy. This is from Lorenzo. This is an Italian designer. I think this was made about 20 years ago, but it looks like it was made in the 1980s. I love this leather. It is clearly a dyed leather. And when you look at it, yes, this looks like something that came from your grandmother's closet. And when you smell it up close, it smells like something that came from your grandmother's closet. So, no, this was not a high value purchase. But again, I love this style and I love the color. So I figured, why not go for it? Finally, another thing that you can do is just go thrifting in person. I actually literally came across this bag, and this is about the size of a hot bag. I feel like this is over 40, around 40 centimeters, and this is $5. This is made in Italy, and one of the tags says savemybag.et or .it, but I love this. This is a great Birkin parody bag that was not a lot of money. Finally, if you do come across a lot of bags that you absolutely love, but maybe the smell is off, maybe the leather is a little bit older, you can most definitely rehab those bags. One of the bags that you can see in the title card, I actually bought from someone who sells suitcases just because, again, suitcases are typically very large, and they felt that it was made in the 70s or in the 80s in Brazilian leather, and the leather itself was hideous. It looked as if it had been diseased, and it was from some very sad animal. But I brought it in to my local shoe repair shop, and he only charged me around $150 to $200 just to get the leather paint in order to spray over the leather that was not attractive. So, if you love the Birkin style and you want a leather that has clearly withstood the sands of time, but maybe needs a little bit of love, then perhaps vintage and thrifting is for you. Next up, you can most definitely make your own handbag. There are so many handbag kits out there. There's Waldorn, there's Babylon Leather, there's Pop Sewing. Also, if you search Etsy or if you search Amazon, you will come across various templates. But first off, I made this bag using Babylon leather. They cut out the pieces for you, they provide the scissors, they provide the needles, they provide the hardware. Uh, Sometimes they provide the instructions. So, for the most part, if you have a lot of time, you can just sit down for an hour or two each day and work on your bag. This took me about 40 hours, and I would say maybe 3 to 4 weeks working on it in the evenings and the weekends. I did not spend a lot of time. There were also parts where I got a little lazy, and you can tell that maybe I didn't pull the thread as tightly, but I absolutely love this little bag. The bag is actually genuine leather. It's not the high quality leather that you might get from Hermes. This is a low ranking leather, but that's okay. It's still leather. It's got a great smell. The only thing I would say about this is that after I purchased, or maybe right before I purchased this kit, I emailed Babylon Leather, or I contacted them through their Facebook page, and I asked them about their ethical practices. How are they treating their workers within their factories? Just because this is so nice, they've done such a great job, and they have provided almost everything to make it very easy for us to just sit down and sew. But if they have so many templates that are so easy for us out of the box, and this was only $100, what are they paying their workers? The response that I received was basically they don't provide that information to external parties, which kind of means they probably aren't treating their workers well. I have done this in the past where I've reached out to indie distributors if they didn't have an ethical statement to ask if they were working with international workers, how were they treating them? Did they have any written or visual proof that they're trying to hold themselves up to a higher standard? And most of the people responded and had no problem sharing information. But Babylon Leather was a little bit of a closed box. One thing I will also say about Babylon Leather is that they do have a couple of Facebook groups, and a lot of those women are actually within the United States, and then they share how they have their own Facebook groups where they sell the bags they create. So they might purchase this for $100 and then sell it for $200 to their friends. Another kit that I used, which I purchased off of Amazon, which is Waldorn, and that was about $23, and that was a baby Birkin, so it was maybe 20 centimeters, and that was so much easier. That took me about 2 weeks, about 20 hours in order to complete, but this one was a little bit larger, so it took more time. And again, if Waldorn is charging $23, okay, I will admit they probably aren't treating their workers well either. I will also say that for their pieces, those were PU leather, so it was not actual leather. Another thing that you can do as well is you can make your own bag based upon a template. I recently started taking sewing classes and also taking leather making classes at Tandy Leather. So I made this at one of their workshops using the templates they provided. So I decided to see what other templates were out there. And I will say both Amazon and both Etsy have templates that you can purchase online. Some are pretty blatant and say, hey, this is a Birkin template. Others just say this is a handbag template. So as you can see, they provide the pieces. You just have to know how to assemble them. And then you can cut out the pieces and sew them together. As you can tell, I am still working on this. One of the templates that I purchased is from someone called Lin, Lin, Cutting Dye, and they were pretty popular on Etsy, but a couple of weeks ago in August when I went to look back to see what else they had available, it showed that the vendor was no longer online or was no longer selling. So that might be good, that might be bad. There's another vendor that I have purchased handbags from on Etsy as well, and they stopped selling through Etsy and they're just selling through their website directly. Another thing that I will say is if you don't want to make your own handbag, and if you decided that you don't want to wade through the closets of grandmothers, then another option is you can get parody bags or contemporary inspired by bags. I will say in the early 00s, when Birkin started to get super hot, there were a lot of designers who were making knockoffs or inspired by, but that's when Hermes became super litigious and that stopped. But now Hermes is having their renaissance, and there are a lot of groups out there that are creating inspired by bags. So first off, there is Saturday House, aka Saniqua, and she makes bags that are using vegan leather, and she paints parody statements on the front, like, your mom or your father bought this Birkin, or you fake like this Birkin. And she also does parodies of other designers as well. There is Teddy Blake. I would say a couple years ago, Teddy Blake's bags, which were made by an Italian distributor whose name is Buti, B-U-T-I. They looked way closer to the Birkin style, but something possibly happened on the back end, and now it's changed a little bit more. Other bags are the Ralph Lauren Ricky, the Bel Air XL, the Valentino Garavani Large Joylock Satchel, and there's also a newer indie company, Silver and Riley, and they're all inspired by the Birkin, where they'll have a front flap, where they will have the handles, but maybe they will change how the straps are handled. Maybe they will change the shape of the flap. Maybe they won't use the colors that Hermes tends to use. So basically, inspired by. And you might ask, well, why still obsess over Hermes when I can get so many bags out there that are in this style? The one thing I can say is still when I look at Hermes and I look at their leather is still so much more sumptuous, so much better. They're just doing so much work in the leather that they're accessing, and they are cutting off that market so that only they have access to that leather. Additionally, when you look at how it is sewed, like when you're looking at just the structure of the bag, I feel that Hermes comes out a little bit better. I had purchased a Ralph Lauren satchel, and that was at the same time that I had purchased or was looking at other secondhand market bags, and the Ralph Lauren bag that I received was just not on the same level of leather or quality and craftsmanship as I had seen in other Hermes bags. However, if you still love that style, if you love that front flap satchel style, and you do not want to pay $10,000 to $12,000, and it is still around $6,000 at the bare minimum if you're looking at eBay for the worst possible bag, then these are the other bags that are open to you that will be a little bit better for your wallet. It'll still be great leather. It'll still be a great craftsmanship. It might not be at the Hermes level, but it'll still be at a higher level than maybe something I might get from TJ Maxx. So, happy hunting.